Welcome to episode 520 of the BobbyCast, and we are streaming this live on our YouTube channel. And if you guys want to be a part of the live stream, just go to Bobby Bones' channel on YouTube and you can watch. We'll start with the Karen Reed trial, which just happened, and I watched the documentary on HBO Max. It's great. I think it was like 4 or 5 parts, and I had only heard about the trial, and so I went and I watched the thing, and I just watched the verdict from the second trial, and I guess it's not a spoiler because it's news, but the first trial, she was found hung, as I have not been, but it was a hung jury. So second trial, which just happened, it's weird at how they were announcing her verdicts, because there are 3. One was like second-degree murder. One was another one. One was like a DUI, basically. But at some point, they should just do it like on television, because it was kind of confusing. They get everybody in the courtroom and they're like, okay, for Hearth, who is it in thou? Does the court acknowledge guilty? Not. I'm completely confused about what's happening. And somebody says not guilty. But I mean, at this point in our life, shouldn't they just go, we find you of charge A, not guilty. We find you on charge B, not guilty. It turns out she was not guilty of second-degree murder. She was not guilty of, I think, leaving the scene. I'm going to mess some of this up. And the third one was guilty, and it was basically driving under the influence. And that was based on an estimate from way after the fact when they tested her. And I followed the trial a little bit. I'm not going to do 20 minutes of material here on the Karen Reed trial. But, so she's not guilty of second-degree murder. That was the big one. So now what are they going to do? It seemed to me like there was very much some sort of cover-up within the system meaning the police force, that town right outside of Boston's police force. But they were so hell-bent on making her guilty. So what do they do now? Do they just stop looking for John O'Keefe's killer? It's bizarre. And if they don't, because again, they don't have a second suspect. She's been on trial for 2 or 3 years at this point. If it's really justice for John, which is what they're saying, then they should actually go and continue to try to find who killed him, because there are only, 7 or 8 people that were around that night. But I didn't think they would find her guilty, especially if you watched any of the trial this time. You could almost say last time, but those jurors are supposedly not affected by the first trial at all. But I don't know how you lived in that area and you weren't completely consumed by the trial. But watch the series. I'm sure they're going to have a new documentary up on the second one as well. But she was found not guilty. So I just watched that. It was just really confusing at how they announced it, because I think it should just be announced like on television. I'm taking your questions as we go as well. We can start with this one. What is a moment in your career you still can't believe actually happened? I have a few of these. Number one is way back in the day when I worked in Hot Springs, Arkansas. My very first job was at a radio station called 105.9 KLEZ. That was a pop radio station. And when I very first started, I worked on the weekends. And I only got a job on the air because they fired a guy that was working on the air. But we also had to do these things called sound and light shows. And he was fired because I think they caught him stealing station equipment. So last minute, they had to throw me on the air. My name wasn't even Bobby Bones at the time. It was just Bobby. I didn't have a name. I'd never been on the air. But they had hired me to clean the front office where the secretary or any of the office people sat. People would come and get their prizes. That was the area that I was hired to clean and switch out the Rick D's weekly top 40 countdown. And so I'm hired at KLAZ to do that. Before my first day of cleaning, I'm put on weekends. I have no experience whatsoever. I moved from weekends to weeknights after just a couple of months because a guy who I still know named Kramer, who is still on radio, was doing nights, and he left to go to another station. So it was a small town, so it wasn't like they were doing a national search for the job. So they just gave me the job. Like, I showed up, I was on time, I wasn't particularly good, but I was young, available, and cheap, so they just gave me the job. And I'm going to get to my point here of, one of these things that I can't believe happened. Because all of this I can believe. If you just show up on time, all the time, and they trust that you're going to be there when you say, there are a lot of opportunities that are going to open up for you. Just because now, as somebody who hires people, if the people that I hire just show up consistently on time, emotionally, physically, like that's 95% of it. And I was that guy. But when I was working at KLAZ and I was going to college, because I wanted to graduate college, nobody in my family had graduated college, I thought as soon as I finish here, I'm going to try to go and get a bigger job. And I had some offers when I was at KLAZ. I mean, I remember flying out to the Tri-Cities, which is in East Tennessee. It's like Bristol, Virginia, a couple other in that Tri. Forgive me to the other two that aren't being mentioned in the Tri. But so I go out, I didn't take that job, a couple other ones. I just wanted to graduate college. And there was a station in Little Rock called Q100. They had just flipped 2 top 40 from whatever format they were. And I really wanted that job because to me, Little Rock was a massive city. That was where they had a couple big buildings. That's where the news was shot. Like Ned Permy, my favorite weatherman, lived in Little Rock. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And so I always wanted, my dream was to work in Little Rock. They had a minor league baseball team. And when you're coming from Mountain Pine, which is where I'm from, population 700, or Hot Springs, which was town, which is where my radio station was, which was 20,000, like Little Rock's massive because it was 500,000 people. So Q100 flips on, and I remember getting a call on the request line. And it said, hey, do you think you might want to come and do nights at Q100? And I thought it was a prank call, but the guy had identified himself as a guy named Ted Stryker. And I was like, yeah, if this is really you, I think that would be super cool. He said, cool, call me tomorrow in the daytime because my shift was at like 8 p.m. And so I called him the next day, and he's like, would love to try you out. Well, the problem was I was on in Hot Springs, and that was about an hour drive. But you could hear both stations. And I would say a little more than faint, but not all the way, but you could hear both stations. And he was like, I'd love to get you on the air at night and give you a tryout. And I'm thinking, I can't really go and try out for your station because I'm on a station right down the road. And if I go and try out, if I quit my job to try out, I don't get the job, that sucks for me. And I told him that. And I said, I don't think I can do it. Like, can you not just listen to me here and make your mind up? Because it's basically the same thing. We're just, playing Britney Spears and NSYNC CDs. Hey, everybody, number 22, Britney Spears. We're just doing that all night. And he was like, no, I really need you on the station. So I said, okay. So what I do, I drive at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I get on Q100 under the name, and I thought I was so funny, Robbie Johnson, because it sounds like Bobby Bones, and it was Bobby Jones, and it's Robbie Jones. So I went Robbie Johnson on Q100 from like 2 to 5 a.m. That was my tryout on a Sunday night, knowing that if I got caught, I was going to get fired, but thinking that there is no chance anybody is going to hear me on this station in Little Rock, 2 to 5 a.m. from my station in Hot Springs, because who's even awake? I remember opening the phone lines, and radio names are so dumb. My name is dumb. It's Bobby Bones. It's not even my real name. So when I say these names, it's funny, but my program director's name was Jack, and his radio name was Jack Frost. And I remember Jack Frost calling the request line at 3 o'clock in the morning, going, Bobby, is that you on the air? Now, again, I'm Robbie Johnson at this time. And I know it's Jack Frost, my program director. And so I just hang up. It was almost like when they say, if you're being questioned by the cops, don't say anything. If you say nothing, you'll at least remain in the same amount of trouble. If you say anything, it could get worse. So I just hung up. And then I blocked the phone lines. You can push one button, it goes, and it blocks all the lines. And I went into work the next Monday and just denied it. I was like, what? I was like, are you crazy? And he was like, I could have swore it was you. I was like, on a Sunday night? 3 a.m.? Anyway, it was me. Never really admitted that till right now. I, for one night, was Robbie Johnson. I got the job. And I left KLAZ and went to Q100 probably 3 weeks later. And it was great. I was there for like 6 months or so before I moved to Austin. But I cannot believe that happened. When I think back, I've not even thought of that story in so long. I can't believe that I took that risk. That's not even a chance. That risk of getting fired. And then I can't believe that Jack Frost was freaking listening. And he called in and got through. And then I answered. And then I just hung up. Oh, that was totally weird. What I really think happened was, I think Jack Frost knew it was me, understood what I was doing, and I think he just got it and never brought it up again. So I appreciate that. Jack Frost is not alive anymore, but I appreciate that. And think of all the dumb radio names. Bobby Bones. I didn't pick my name, by the way. Like, I picked it out of a choice of like 3. But Bobby Bones, Ted Stryker, who I mentioned, Jack Frost. Another guy was Kevin Cruz, who hired me at KLAZ. Man, podcasters have it lucky. They don't have to come up with stupid names like we had to. That was one, and my second one is probably winning Dancing with the Stars. Not even just going on Dancing with the Stars, because that was more of a strategy for ABC. And that story is a bit bizarre because I had started on American Idol, and I did a season, and I was going back for the second season, which was going to be my first full season, because I did like 3/4 of a season that year that I went on the first time. And things were going pretty good at that time because I had an offer to judge The Masked Singer, which I didn't know what the show was. I think it was only on in Japan or whatever country it started in. So they called and said, hey, do you want to be one of the judges on The Masked Singer? And it was that versus there was a show on USA Network. And the show had Travis Tritt, Jake Owen, Shania Twain as like the judges. And it was some kind of singing show here in Nashville. And they offered me the host of that job. Or it was option C, which was stay on American Idol. And I was going to sign a 2-year deal with American Idol and go do Dancing with the Stars as promotion for American Idol. That was kind of part of my deal, meaning I didn't have to, but they encouraged me to accept that if I were to take the Idol deal because they needed someone to go on that show to promote American Idol. So I never had the ambition to go on to American Idol Dancing with the Stars. Like, I never had the dream to go on Dancing with the Stars and just dance. I'd never really watched the show, at least not all the way through. I had seen clips and stuff because it was definitely a piece of pop culture in American television history, especially when it started. But I took the ABC Disney offer, which was American Idol, Dancing with the Stars. And then I went on Dancing with the Stars, and they told me this show will be 4 or 5 weeks, and we'll have you back over to American Idol in time. And I remember telling one of the producers, if you think I'm only going to last 4 weeks, I have a feeling that's not going to be the case, so we should start to figure out what happens if I'm still on this show and American Idol is taping. And it's not that they laughed. It wasn't like, so I got a text. Dang. I'm so important right now. You would never believe what that text was. The text was, can you take the dog out? So you guys think that I'm some kind of podcast superstar. And I just got a text going, can you take the dog out? I think he's got to poop. So what happens is I go on that show and they're like, usually people that can't dance and have never danced, they last 4 weeks. And I wasn't in the bottom 3. And it came to that point where I had to make a decision. Do I leave the show to go to American Idol or keep dancing on Dancing with the Stars? And it wasn't even that I loved dancing because I didn't know how to dance, but I respected all the work that my partner had put in, Sharna. I didn't want her to be off the show just because I decided I needed to go back to Idol. And they were paying me a lot of money. But I stayed on Dancing with the Stars, and we won the freaking thing. And when it comes to one of the craziest things ever, it's standing there, and there were 4 of us that were still remaining. And Tom Bergeron and Aaron Andrews, they go to that card, and he's like, and the winner of Dancing with the Stars, season 27. I remember it so vividly. And I remember in that time, because there's music playing, it sounds like a heartbeat. My heart wasn't going bam, 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 bam. Oh, I wonder. It was mostly like I was about to die, and I was like reliving my life. It was flashing before my eyes. But it was just all my Dancing with the Stars history, like all those 10 weeks of just grinding it out. And I was kind of seeing all that flash by. And I remember when he said, "B," because that's what he said, Bobby and Sharna, that "B." And I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. It wasn't like I won like the World Series or the Super Bowl. because those guys have like worked their whole lives to do that. Like they honed those skills since they were 6 years old and went up through all the levels. Like I got thrown on a show because I took another job. But it was cool because I had the lowest odds because Vegas put out the odds. I don't think there's a question I worked way harder than everybody else because I had a normal job as well. And I was touring. And I was living in a city I didn't live in. And I was just doing that show and training extra. So I do think that I worked harder than anybody else, but it's because I had to. I was coming from such a detriment when it came to my dance experience. But I remember going to that show and just being like, this is wild. And they lifted me up like Rudy. And I remember that. And they lifted me up and they were like, yeah. So that was a crazy time because like the show was out there. Amy was out there. Eddie had come out and stayed with me for some of that show. And Mike D and I lived together. But that was a bizarre time. And not that I went on the show. It wasn't the craziest thing that happened. But the fact that I won that freaking show. Like I won a reality show, a reality competition. Like that's weird because I don't feel like I really went on a reality show. But they do record you all the time. There's a microphone on your body all the time when you do that show. When you're training, they're always trying to catch you doing something, saying something. They want something romantic, something dramatic. And Sharna and I made a deal way early. They weren't getting any of that from us. And mostly it's because I was so focused on just trying to get to even so she could then teach me that there was no room for me to really have any sort of human emotion. It was just grind. But that was bizarre. And then they had the party afterward. And I've told this story before, but after the show is finished, they have like a quick winning party for like the champion and everybody that season. I didn't get to go to it because I had to get in my car immediately and drive to work and then spend the next hour and a half doing that next morning's radio show. And as soon as that's over, I drove to the airport. We hopped on a plane and flew across the country to go do Good Morning America. And I remember getting on the plane and everybody being irritated that I made them late. And I was like, guys, I have a job. But that was bizarre and cool. And I still have the mirror ball. It's down here. And I don't think about it as much as I used to, meaning it's not like a part of my identity anymore. But when I think of like wildly absurd, bizarre things, that whole experience makes that list. Here's another question. What is the most impactful song of your life? I think I probably have 3 of these. I think number 1, it's John Mayer, Stop This Train. That's my favorite song of all time, I think, because I feel like that was the first song that I ever heard sang by anybody that I felt like whoever wrote that song wrote it in my voice. And I think that's what a great songwriter is. It's not just somebody who can rhyme words and have a really cool melody. At least it's not just that. And when he was singing Stop This Train, because the whole song's about, time just goes by. And if you don't like stop the train occasionally and like appreciate it, like you're not going to appreciate it ever. And there's a line in the song that says, I may butcher this because I haven't thought about this in a long time. I'm so scared of getting older. I'm only good at being young. And like I resonated with that because forever I was like the young guy in this medium, radio especially. I was like the youngest by 10, 15 years, doing it at the level that I was doing it. And so, yeah, that line hit me pretty hard. I would still say probably my favorite song ever. So that was one where I started to appreciate songwriting. Another one of the songs, I think I have 3, is Thomas Rhett, Beer with Jesus. I love Thomas Rhett, but I thought that song was so stupid. And it was when I was considering coming to country music. Stupid's not the word, corny. Because Eddie and I were playing golf in Austin, and I was trying to get Eddie to move to Nashville with me. And this whole thing is not a shot at that song, but just our feeling about that song when we turned it on. Because what happened was, Eddie and I are playing golf in Austin, and I'm like, dude, you got to come and move to Nashville with me. Because he had turned down offers to be on the morning show in Texas. He was like, I don't want to wake up that early. He had a job in the news. Like, he was doing pretty good. And I said, dude, come to Nashville, move your family. I will pay you really well. And you'll run cameras, and you'll edit, and you'll be on the air. And I don't really know what your role is going to be, but you're my best friend, so come on. And my whole career has been find my friends that show up on time every time that I can depend on, and let's go and build something cool. And he wouldn't say yes. And I said, well, let's turn on a song. And we turned on the Big 98 in Nashville, which is I guess our flagship station here. We're not really working from that studio, but it's in our building, and we're in Nashville, so we'll call it flagship. And I turned it on, and the song that was on, and it may have been Thomas Rhett's first single, was, "If I could have a beer with Jesus, I'd tell him." And I was like, this is the worst song ever to try to get Eddie to move to Nashville. And I don't know TR's relationship with that song right now. He may love it and still think. And it's not even about Jesus, so don't hit me up and be like, I can't believe. Well, I mean, I don't drink beer, so I definitely wouldn't have a beer with Jesus. And if Jesus like tried to get me to drink beer for the first time, is that even Jesus, or is that the devil in disguise? You ever think about that? You probably haven't thought about that. But that song was very impactful because I think that song probably kept Eddie from almost moving to Nashville. I'm going to call him real quick. And he doesn't know I'm talking about this, obviously, because it was a question from you guys live. Let's see if he answers on FaceTime. He may not even answer. I guarantee you he knows the song. And if he doesn't, I'll be shocked. Hey, dude. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what up?
Okay, I'm recording right now, so you're on, and I'm telling a story, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I just want you to tell me if you remember, okay?
Okay.
Whenever we were playing golf in Austin, Texas, and I'm trying to convince you to move to Nashville to do this show with me, and I'm like, dude, just come on, just bring your family, move across. And we decided to turn the radio on to kind of get the temperature and be like, is this cool or not? What song was playing?
Thomas Rhett, "If I Can Have a Beer with Jesus." I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
What would you say our feeling was when we heard that song?
Huh. I don't think we talked about it. We just looked at each other. We looked at each other and went, huh.
Okay. I just wanted to see if you remembered that the same way I did.
Yep.
Okay. All right, buddy. See you later.
All right, bye.
Bye. Impactful. But Thomas Rhett, I love you, buddy. I don't want you to be offended by this, but that's the truth. And the third one is probably, when it comes to impactful songs, probably Chris Stapleton. And I'm going to say Tennessee Whiskey, and not because of the song, but in the history of the Bobby Bones Show, there have only been a few people that I've called and like said, hey, you got to come on the show. I'm a big fan. Way before they popped, and then when they popped, it worked out to be super beneficial to me. One of those was Chris Stapleton. And I remember calling him at his house. He was in the shower. And at this point, he was a songwriter. And he had some hits as a songwriter, but he wasn't a known artist. And he said, let me call you right back. I'm in the shower. All live on the air. And I'm like, dude, come up. You're awesome. He's like, okay. He comes up. He plays. Boom. It's great. He does Josh Turner, "Baby Turn Them Lights Down," because he wrote that song. And it has like 8 million views now on YouTube. But that was before Tennessee Whiskey. So it was very beneficial to me that I heard his amazing voice before he blew up. Because I didn't make him good. I didn't find him. I didn't make him famous. I didn't put him and Justin Timberlake together. But as soon as he popped like he did, he had this really cool loyalty to me, which still to this day, for some reason, he holds. Anytime I ask him to do anything, it is a very quick yes. I love Chris. Chris doesn't do a whole lot, like publicly as far as interviews, but he's always on the show when I call him. He did the $1 Million Show with Eddie and I at the Ryman. He came and played it. But I would say that song, because that created that relationship with Chris Stapleton and I. I got very fortunate there. Those 3 songs, but mostly Beer with Jesus. It's crazy that Eddie remembers that. Here's another question. What's the most misunderstood part of your job? 1, how difficult it is to wake up every morning. It's not difficult like my stepdad who worked at the mill difficult. It's a different kind of difficult. I would much rather do what I'm doing because I chose to do what I do, and I built all the avenues that I get to drive down every day to do what I do, meaning this podcast, meaning the radio show, meaning any of the television projects that I do. So I did it all. Once I remember I was doing Breaking Bobby Bones on Nat Geo, and I was injured a lot because that show had me catching myself on fire as a stuntman, falling off houses, climbing in the middle of winter in Iowa, wind turbine, like all this stuff. And I was always hurt. And I would complain about it. My wife would go, I get it that you're hurting, but you created all this stuff that's hurting you. So you can only be so upset. And that's how I feel about the morning show, right? It sucks to wake up early in the morning. That being said, how difficult that is, I would say the constant pressure to be on all the time. Now, again, I did this because I'm the one that decided to do the radio show, the NFL podcast, 25 Whistles, the BobbyCast. I did the Yellowstone podcast. So I did all this. So when I say this, it's all my fault. But there really is so much energy you have, and that's it. You hit a point. And I think as I record this, like I've kind of hit that point. Luckily, I have a few days off coming up, vacation in the next few weeks. But I think that's a misunderstood part that, and I'm not whining, but you can actually like fry your brain. I think my brain's fried right now. I think in like the radio part of it, it used to be relatable. Relatability is key. And I think there was something to that, but it's not even that anymore. I think being entertaining is number one. Being authentic or telling the truth is number two. Because if you're being entertaining, you can't stay in character or remember your lies. That's why I don't lie more. I can't remember them. And I'm on like 7 places doing 7 different things. I don't think I lie at all. If I do, you're going to hear me contradict myself not knowing it because I'm saying things in all these different places. So I think number 1 is entertaining. Number 2 is being honest and authentic. And then number 3 is being relatable. Like I think relatability is fine and it's good, but like your neighbor is relatable. Do you want to listen to them talk for an hour on a podcast? Probably not. I mean, maybe. But relatability was such a 2000s thing where it was number 1. And we still get this research sometimes. It's like, you're not being relatable enough. I'm like, good. Does that mean I'm being way more entertaining? Because I don't want to be fake relatable. If I were to come on now and say the things that I said 15 years ago, you guys would know it was a lie. If I came on and said things like, man, I went to the vet and that bill was so high, I'm thinking about not even like paying it and just seeing what happens. And that's a real thing that happens with people. But you guys know I have money now because I've been doing this for so long. Or if I'm like, I had to go buy a new set of tires, that's really got me strapped this month. You guys would know I was full of crap. Now I had to live a big part of my life like that. But like that's the relatability part that I understand because I had it, but I don't have it anymore. So I don't lie about that part anymore. So those are probably, and by the way, those aren't even that big of a deal. Like my job is pretty cool. I put a lot of time and effort into it and a lot of strategy, but my job's pretty cool. So I don't complain about it much. Mostly if I do complain about it, it's only if I'm complaining about Beer with Jesus and that song that almost kept me from coming here. What do people assume about your success that isn't true? I think you probably assume everything that's correct about this. It is a lot of being on, but who cares? Like, wah, wah. Again, my stepdad worked at the mill. Like, I've seen real work before. And I think this is real work, but it's definitely not the same. So, not to not spend time on that question, but that was a little bit like the last one. I don't even know why I picked it, but thank you for sending it. Which moment felt more like you made it? Your first big check or your first big opportunity? That's interesting. My first big check or my first big opportunity? Well, the first thing I bought with what I felt was my first big check was a pair of Jordans, white Jordans. I didn't have nice shoes growing up, and if I did, I got them at a yard sale. So I thought the first time I make money and I have money that is more than just week to week, I'm going to buy me the coolest Jordans. And I bought a pair of white Jordan 6s. Like, that's cool. That's special because I still remember that. I still remember going to the mall and buying those. I bought my mom a trailer and 2 acres of land before she died. Like, that was from another big check. Like, I signed a contract in Austin, I think, for like $400,000 a year. Like, just walking back through my checks and what I made per year. When I started in radio full-time, I made like $16,000 a year. And that was all hourly. So it was $16,000, but it was based on $9 an hour or something like that. When I went to Austin to do nights full-time, because I went from Little Rock to Austin, I went for $32,000 a year. And that was 2003, late 2002. When I got the morning job in Austin and they paid me $50,000 a year, I was rich. I really felt like I was rich. It was I think of any of the, hey, we're going to sign a new contract, there was more joy in that one than any other deal that I had ever signed, because it was the first time that there was this entirely new feeling of, I don't feel fundamentally like I am just swimming as hard as I can to stay above water. And that $50,000 a year was crazy. I could not believe it. So that job, and by the time I left Austin, it was $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And that's pretty good. But that was also like bonuses. Like we were number one for like 5 years in a row. And when I say that, I mean every quarter they would have a ratings book. And if I hit for 4 quarters in a row, I got a bonus of like $75,000. And 4 years in a row, I hit that freaking bonus. Like we would crush in Austin. And so when you ask the question, first big check or first big opportunity, like those are the checks that I think of. The other check that I think of, I had gone and I had done some episodes on American Idol that first season. And they had me come in for one episode, and it was really to talk to kids, young adults, but mostly kids on that show, about what it was like to be interviewed by multiple people and walk them through the process of like how to start over at the next interview and how to have your microphone close to your mouth. Really, that's what it was. It was like how to be interviewed. So I go and I do that. But what I found and what they found too was that I understood what a lot of those young adults and kids were going through, because until I had been sent to New York or Los Angeles for work, I'd never been to New York or Los Angeles. And then when I got there, I was like, wow, this is like television. I was overwhelmed a bit, as were they. And so they kept me on. I did multiple episodes. And I've told the story, and I talked about it, I think, in my special, which is not even available, because once CMT aired it, I put it on YouTube and then never pushed load. I guess I loaded it. I just never made it public. I talked about that and how I lost money for like 3 episodes because American Idol didn't even know that I didn't live in Los Angeles. They thought I lived there because I didn't want them to use that as a reason not to hire me for another episode. So they were paying me union minimum, and by the time I was paying for my flights and my hotel, I was losing hundreds of dollars, but still money an episode. So for like 3 episodes, I lost money. And so they asked me to come back and do more episodes, and I was like, okay, I have to make a confession to you guys. I don't live here. And so my manager at the time was like, we'll get you a higher rate. And so they paid me for like the last couple episodes, $50,000 an episode on American Idol, that first season. So the first season ends, and this is we're doing a prequel here to that story I told earlier. That first season ends, and I had heard they were going to offer me a deal for another season, maybe 2. And I'm thinking, if they just pay me like that $50,000 an episode, that's going to be awesome. And so they made an offer to me, and it was like $300,000. I would have said yes immediately. My manager, whose name is Corin Capshaw, who's the owner of Red Light Management, he said, don't take it. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, if you just say no, they're going to offer you more. And I said, are you sure? And he said, well, you really can't be sure of anything. And I thought, if I say no to this, they're offering me a full-time job on this show. They're offering me $300,000 or something like that, all in. And if I say no, they may go, well, there's 11 of you here in LA. More than that we can hire to put on this show. And he said, if I were you, as your manager, I can't say no, but I'm going to say, you should say no to this. And so I trusted him. And I said, guys, I don't feel like you're paying me enough. I'm going to say no. Their next offer was $1.2 million. And I said yes immediately. That's a big check. That's a big check. That's pretty cool. And then I don't know what the weird part about that question is, your first big opportunity. I don't feel like I ever just had this massive opportunity that came to me out of nowhere, or this opportunity that just showed up because they're like, we think you're so great. Here's a big opportunity. Everything that I've been doing has been one small ladder rung, and then one small ladder rung, and then I fall down a couple ladder rungs, and then I climb up 3 small ladder rungs. Like, I don't really feel like I've ever had a massive jump that either didn't have a lot of risk involved or really wasn't that massive because I'd been working on it for so long behind the scenes. So I'm going to say you made it was the big checks, because there was never just a massive opportunity that presented itself that I wasn't either killing myself to get. Yeah, it's the money. And I've never really done anything just for money. I've probably taken a couple speaking engagements, but that's one day. And those pay really well. If it's a private speaking engagement or a private, like just me going up to do some jokes, that's significant. So I've done that for money, but I've never like taken on a whole project for money. I did the Yellowstone podcast, and I thought that was a good relationship builder. I kind of regret doing that. It wasn't that Yellowstone was bad to work with. It wasn't that Paramount was bad to work with. That production company was terrible. And the producer of that was just really awful. And when he sent the email that was like, you're not famous enough to get big guests, because I said, hey, why don't we get Kevin Costner? Why don't we get, and he was like, yeah, if you were famous, we could get him, but you're not famous enough. And I was like, okay, cool. I had Costner on my show like 4 weeks prior. I felt pretty good about sending that email off. But I'm going to go checks. Is AI going to ruin creativity, or is AI going to enhance it? That's the question. My answer is going to be the AI is going to enhance it. I think everything has always been enhanced by things that were going to ruin creativity. And I can walk you through this. I've thought about this a bit because I love AI. I make AI teasers for upcoming guests on the BobbyCast. So if we go back, the printing press in the 1400s, people said that the printing press would kill memory, it would kill oral tradition, like just telling stories into your buddy's ear, and Papa would tell grandkids stories, and it would kill the sacred art of hand copying texts. So the printing press was going to ruin creativity in the 1400s. In the 1800s, photography was going to ruin creativity. Painters were pissed at photography. And so people were like, that's it. It's over. These machines are taking pictures. It's not the human hand anymore. Why paint when you can just click? Then recorded music in the 1900s. Live musicians panicked. Sheet music aficionados, I don't even know what you call that, like publishers, they went ballistic. The whole thought was if music is put on a vinyl or on a way that people will not go to live shows anymore. That was ruining creativity. You can go to the 1970s or the 1980s, synthesizers and drum machines. Traditional musicians said it was fake, it was robotic, it was soulless, that's not real music. Now that's so much a part of real music, pop, hip-hop, EDM, even country. Sampling in the 80s and the 90s, like old school purists said that borrowing other clips of other songs was just theft, not art. That it was just noise, not music. Are you seeing the patterns here? Auto-tune in the 90s. I think Share Believe was the first auto-tune song that was a hit. T-Pain gets all the credit because he made it his thing, which is weird because T-Pain could really, really sing. So it was a stylistic choice for T-Pain more than anything else. YouTube and social media in the 2000s, people said it was just kids making dumb videos, and then when it started to catch on, it was, well, it's not really television. But then when it got so big, it was like, television's done. Everything's going to be done on YouTube for a nickel. Streaming services. So my only point here about that question is every generation thinks that the next part of technology is killing creativity. But the thing about creativity is it doesn't die. It adapts. It always has. AI isn't the end of originality. It is just a really cool tool in the box. And I think all of those have been tools in the box so far. It can't replace human emotion or experience or taste. It can only reflect it based on what it's built on. So I can understand people getting upset about AI at times. But remember, people got upset at the printing press. And that's what I want you to say tonight. The next time someone's like, AI is ruining music, say, you sound like someone in 1418 complaining about the printing press. But I think AI is great. And if you don't use it, you're going to get crushed by someone else that is. Because again, it's a tool. Next question. What's one story from behind the scenes of the Bobby Bones Show you've never told? I guess I'm feeling a bit nostalgic. So there was a point during the show when I knew we were moving to Nashville, but I could not tell anybody else on the show we were moving to Nashville because I hadn't even decided who I was going to take because it was so new to me. But they said, you can't tell anybody because legally there are people that can't know. And I'm not sure if it was because they needed to be moved, because a lot of the shows that were on in the mornings when we came on around the country either got moved to like middays or afternoons, or some of them were let go before we even came on. Like, I didn't have any control over any of that. But because of that, I couldn't talk about it. Couldn't tell anybody about it. And so there were a couple stories specifically that come to mind. Amy was trying to buy a house in Austin, and she had moved to North Carolina. She worked remotely from North Carolina for a couple of years because her husband at the time, now her ex-husband, was in the military, and she worked on the show with us in Austin. I'd built that whole syndication company myself in Austin. And so because I did that, I had the leverage to say, we're keeping Amy. And it was kind of unheard of to have a co-host that wasn't in the same room with you. And so Amy was working in North Carolina, moving back to Austin. Everybody was pumped because she was going to be back in the room with us. But as she was moving back and looking for a house, that's when it's, okay, I'm taking the Nashville job. I was like, I got to tell Amy she's going to buy a house in like a week. They wouldn't let me do it. And I said to them, she may not take the job if she buys a house. They would not let me do it. She put an offer in on a house. They accepted the offer. And for some reason, part of the contingency fell through. And the house was never able to be bought. It was just like taken off the market or something. And thank God that happened, because I don't know that Amy would have come to Nashville with us. And not because of me, but because her and her husband had just bought a house. So that one, and then Raymundo, where Raymundo had come to me, and Ray was an intern for me. And the way that I met Ray was he was doing internships for different radio stations in the building, and he was an intern for the sports station called 1300 The Zone in Austin. And they asked me if I would fill in on like a holiday or two. And I was like, that's cool. I love sports. Why not? And I needed a producer, and he was producing. And I said, hey, man, do you want to produce this sports show? I didn't know him. And he was like, yeah, I would love to. That's how we knew each other. Then he came as an intern on the show. He was never a paid employee in Austin before he moved to Nashville. But I knew he wanted to be. And I was trying to help him find a job in some other city, anywhere, because Ray just wanted to go and work and make a living out of doing radio. And I called him in the office, and I knew I was going to Nashville. And I said, hey, man, I think I got you an offer in a different city. Do you care where it is? But I can't tell you right now. And he's like, I don't care, I'm going. I said, okay, I can tell you the city where the offer is, but I can't tell you really the show because of some legal things. He's like, it's fine. I said, I really trust this show, and I think you're going to do great there, and they want you as like the head audio producer, and he's cloud nine. Like, it's the most exciting thing ever to him. And I get it, because I know what that felt like. And I said, the show's in Nashville, but I can't say much else. And he's like, this is awesome. I'm moving to Nashville. And it was a while before I could tell him the show was actually me and that he was going to move with us. And his first paid job was with me in Nashville. And now paid, Ray has been 13 years. Man, looking back at all the guys on the show, like Amy and Lunchbox, just about 20 years. Ray, 13 years. Eddie, 13, 14 years. Like, our crew's been together a long time. But I would say that's a behind-the-scenes story that really doesn't get shared a whole lot. I haven't really thought about it. I'll do a couple more. We're just doing 50 minutes. So this is full 50 minutes club here. What's the most overrated artist of all time? We talked about this on the radio show recently. I can go into a little more depth on mine. I think the most overrated artist of all time is a band, and I think it's U2. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think they're good or even great, because I do really like U2. But I think it's okay to say U2 is really good, but also feel they're a bit overrated. and I can give you some reasons. They get classic airplay consideration, like on classic rock stations, for songs that weren't even hits. Like Vertigo wasn't even a hit. It plays on classic rock. Like just because they're U2, they just play their songs. And I can get into more into that just because they're U2. But even like Elevation, that's not Sweet Child of Mine. That's not Smells Like Teen Spirit. So it gets played on like classic rock and even alternative stations. They weren't even hits back in the day. Okay, that's a dumb one, but I'll put it there. Bono at times is so annoying that his persona, the character he plays, can overshadow the music and make you not like the band. Now, I think it's great to be an activist, but I feel like he's activist first. And maybe his glasses just piss me off. Like those glasses aren't even real sunglasses. I'm wearing sunglasses right now because I got lights right in my eyeballs. But like he wears the clear ones. They're not even sunglasses. But I feel like Bono's like Messiah complex even at times. And I don't know him, but that can dominate the narrative of U2. So even if the music's good, people that really love Bono are like, no, it's different. It's different. The iTunes thing still hits people because back in the day, 2014-ish, it was before the Cubs won the World Series, but not way before the Cubs won the World Series. That album, Songs of Innocence, was put on everybody's freaking iPod or iPhone. I guess that had to be iPhone. And so there was this U2 album that wasn't even that good on everybody's iPhone. That did not help their legacy. And I remember they gave you a way to delete it like a week later. Yeah, that was significant. They haven't had a really good album in like 20 years. I looked when we were doing this segment for the show. They really haven't had anything in 20, 25 years. And then it's almost like they've been treated as untouchable gods, like rock and roll gods. They do deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I do like U2, but they have been basically the moral compass of rock, and that can wear thin. When every album that comes out is also like attached to a global cause, and I love global causes, I do. Sign me up for more global causes. But it's like every album that comes out, it's like a different rainforest or something. It's like, bro, sometimes we just want a song to sing. It's like a TED Talk. I don't need a TED Talk for every song that you put out, Bono. But I do like U2. That's the weird thing. But I would say I think U2 has absolutely earned their place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I just don't think they need a throne inside the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to sit on and look down upon others. Another question. Has country music lost its identity, or has country music evolved? Country music has always been losing, quote, its identity since it was even invented. There has never been a half decade where people weren't saying, that ain't real country music. And we can walk through this too if you want. I feel like I've done this TED Talk 100 times. Because since day one, people have said that, man, country music's just not what it used to be. But country music has always been evolving, and those changes are what keeps country music alive. And you can kind of walk through it decade by decade and look at every time that someone said, this ain't real country, which makes you look at the people that say it now and you look at them almost with sympathy, like you're kind of dumb because it's been said over and over and over again, to things that we're told that weren't country that actually are, again, fundamentally what we think are country music now. Like the 1930s, 1940s, and that's back when the Grand Ole Opry started broadcasting, which I'm going to tonight, by the way, still thriving. Critics claim that the Opry was turning country music into a vaudeville act because of the stage, because of the talking, because of the fun. Back in the 30s and 40s, and I really credit that country music documentary on PBS that was fantastic. Bob Wills introduced Western swing and fiddles mixed with jazz, and the whole world, the country music world, turned over in its, they're supposed to be dead, grave because they used an electric amp on a steel guitar. Like, that was not country. Isn't that crazy to think? Like, a steel guitar at one point, amped up, was not country music. But again, the people now that are going, that ain't country, that was them telling Bob Wills, you ain't country. Telling the Grand Ole Opry, you ain't country. In the 1950s, it was too much rock and roll. Elvis, Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash, they definitely blurred the lines with rockabilly. And if you ever heard of the Nashville Sound, it was a much smoother type of country music. And the Nashville Sound comes to mind now because Brian Wilson just died. And Brian Wilson used the Wrecking Crew. And the Wrecking Crew had, these artists that were like session players now, but the best. But that's what the Nashville Sound kind of turned into. Very slick. It was like strings. It was an attempt to popularize pop up country music, but old school fans called that sellout music. But I mean, that's Patsy Cline, that's Jim Reeves, that's things we look at now as that's country music. In the 70s, it was the Outlaws are killing country music. What's weird now is like the Outlaws are, man, that's my favorite outlaw era. But the Outlaws were told they weren't country music by the same people. Now they're going, that's not country music, to insert whichever artist now they're mad at. But in the 70s, it was all about the Outlaws and how the Outlaws are killing country music. Willie and Waylon and Chris Christopherson, they rejected all of that, the Nashville sound that was so smooth and polished. Critics called the outlaw music disrespectful, not traditional. So the music we look at now as what created country was looked at then as what's ruining country. There's definitely a pattern with annoying people going, that ain't country. In the 80s, it got too pop. Alabama, Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton. Like, everybody's like, you're pop artist, you're pop artist, you're pop artist. I mean, heck, Kenny Rogers was actually a pop artist. You know that song, what condition my condition was in? That was Kenny Rogers. And I'm not going to say he was a failed pop artist, but he was a failed pop artist who then came to country. Dolly bounced back and forth because she could. Traditionalists were all pissed off at all these pop artists that were making country. How familiar does that sound right now? Probably very. But they expanded the country music audience. They made people listen that normally wouldn't want to listen while still dominating the country charts. In the 90s, Garth's going to run country. And a lot of times because of his pyro stage shows, huge crossover success, circus. Garth does a circus. It's not even a real tour. He became the biggest solo artist of all time. And now we look at Garth. There's no question Garth was country. But Garth was getting pushback on being country. 2000s, that's when we kind of got here. Bro country. And that was beer and trucks and girls, and country music lost its soul. But bro country again did what some of those other generations did, where it brought new fans. The first time I heard Nelly and Florida Georgia Line do Cruise, I was like, that's it. And yeah, looking back, was it kind of lame? No, it wasn't. It was awesome for the time. And I think it sucks to say the word bro country to like Luke Bryan, who's a friend of mine, but they weren't doing bro country to do bro country. That was just the vibe of the time. And you're going to tell me that didn't bring tons of fans in? And it's easy and it feels good to hate on bro country now, but it was really good. Like it got corny because everybody started doing it, and then it got very corny. Today there's too much hip hop. There's too much pop. Post Malone, Diplo, Beyonce, that ain't country. But what even is country? And the one thing that has stayed consistent with country music is it's always evolving. And the one thing that stays consistent is people are going, well, that ain't country. So the next time you see somebody go, well, that ain't country, just know they're a friggin' idiot. Because it's impossible to say what's not country. There are some things now that could be happening that in 10 years won't still be country because the actual gatekeepers are the people, the consumer. But when you see somebody or an article written by whomever going, this ain't country music, just know they call it the Grand Ole Opry vaudeville. And that same writer was probably doing that in the 30s and 40s on a different timeline. They don't know anything about music that you don't know. So had country music never changed, and I'll soapbox this for an hour, I'm not going to, it would have died in a barn in the 30s. The only constant in country music is that somebody always sucks and is changing it. So that's what's up. It's not losing its identity. It's always trying to find its new identity, is what I would say there. All right, I'm going to do 2 more questions. If you had 1 hour of uninterrupted airtime that every American had to listen to, what would you say? That's good. I think I would say that we're all way, way, way more alike than we are different, and that politicians need to divide you to exist. Like, they need to divide you like we need water and air. So the politicians that you're a huge fan of, if you are a huge fan of, they need you to not like the other party, because that's what's going to motivate you. I watched this thing once, and it was one of those shows like 2020 or Nightline. They had all these people that were trying to lose weight, and they said, okay, we have this first group, and we're going to give them the offer of, if you lose 20 pounds in 8 weeks, we're going to give you $1,000. We have this other group, the same amount of people, different people, but same amount. And if you don't lose that weight, we've taken nude pictures of you. We're going to post them on the internet. So it was positive versus negative reward. You know, the one that worked, that actually motivated people, was the negative reward like crazy, because people were like, well, yeah, this sucks, but I guess I don't need the 1,000. Well, people don't want their wieners on the internet if they don't put it on there. And so negativity always moves people. We've seen some really bad things in history with negativity and division. So politicians, they yearn to divide. Generally, they need it. They need you divided, and they need you fighting. And in that fight, you need to fight for them. So you're more like the person that you can't stand than you ever thought you were. And the politicians that you know as mostly being anti-something, they're being pro-something, dirtballs. Dirtballs. If you think of like 10 politicians, and if the first thing you think of is what they're against instead of what they're for, dirtballs. Broken system. That's probably what I would say. One final question. What's one conspiracy theory that you don't have to say you believe, but you also can't let go of? Epstein didn't kill himself. There's no way Epstein killed himself. I mean, there's a way, I guess, because I wasn't there. But just let me lay out some stuff for you here about Epstein, and supposedly now they're like, no, we saw it. I thought the camera was broken. How can you see it now? Number one, he was on suicide watch. And then he was mysteriously taken off suicide watch. They had him under supervision 24/7 because he had already, quote, attempted suicide. So he's on suicide watch. They're watching him. And all of a sudden they take him off suicide watch, and that's when he kills himself because they basically gave him the opportunity to do it. Fishy. Next up, both security cameras malfunctioned at the same moment. The surveillance cameras outside of a cell conveniently failed at the same time. You're going to tell me that they both died at the exact same time. And that one exact time, not just a random time where they just flipped him back on, was the one time he killed himself. That's like your Ring doorbell cam dying right before the burglar breaks in. Like 5 seconds before the burglar breaks in. And that's only one camera, not even two of them. Both guards fell asleep at the same time. As the cameras went down at the same time, both guards went to sleep at the same time. Two trained federal officers fell asleep during the same shift, during the most high-profile suicide risk in custody. That's not just bad luck and random. That is extremely suspicious. The other one is, he was about to name names, supposedly. Court documents, and there was testimony that implicated powerful people, billionaires, politicians, royalty. He wasn't just a threat. To them, he was a freaking loaded gun pointed right at him. You want another one? His cellmate was pulled out right before he died. So you got two cameras that go down, you got two guards that go to sleep, you got him taken off suicide watch, and you got a cellmate pulled out right before he died. That cellmate was in there for, quote, safety, and they removed the one person that would have been a witness. His injuries didn't match a hanging. The government closed the book super fast. They're like, yep, that's it. Done. Epstein killed himself. All right, next up. And then the really weird one was Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, you see her in all the pictures with him. It was like his girlfriend or like his trafficking partner or both. Like, she was convicted of trafficking kids, but to no one. She was found guilty of trafficking underage girls to clients, but there is no list, there's no follow-up, no names. What's happening here? So that's the one. I don't know anybody who thinks that he actually killed himself. Yeah, that one's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, that's it. We did 50 minutes. 50-minute club, we're done. We'll do it again sometime soon. Thank you. If you enjoyed these one-on-ones, please let me know. We'll do another one next week, week after. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right, that's it for this episode of the BobbyCast. We have Mark Cuban coming up. We have Brooks and Dunn coming up, interviews with them that are super cool. I'm super excited to have. So appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you guys soon. All right, bye, everybody.